I just found out why my boyfriend never holds my toddler niece. The author of the post is listed in the description. I, 27F, have been with my boyfriend, 28MJ, for 5 years. We've both been very close with each other's families, and we've even talked about marriage. However, one touchy subject is children. Whenever we discuss it, he gets kind of standoffish. He doesn't really dismiss the idea, though. It's just that he doesn't seem invested. I've always wanted kids, and he just always says he's fine with whatever makes me happy. Ever since, I've been content with this situation. However, things escalated during this holiday season. Our setup has always been that Jay spends Christmas Eve and dinner with my family, then I spend Christmas Day with his family. This was the first Christmas I'll spend with my first and only niece, 2F, Anna. She spent her first Christmas in the hospital due to her health condition, but she's okay now. So I made sure to spend a lot of time with her. We played a lot, we opened gifts together, and I even reenacted Anna's favorite storybook using her favorite doll. We even had matching outfits. My sister, 30F, Amy, thanked me for giving her and her husband some relief from childcare the entire day. However, Amy also said she noticed that Jay, who was just either sitting on the couch watching me or helping my mom with the dishes, was kinda distant with Anna. I told her I've also noticed that before, and I just chalked it up to maybe Jay was hesitant and awkward to play with Anna because he feels he's just my boyfriend. Then Amy said she won't mind, since she and her husband already treat Jay as part of our family. I then went back to Jay and encouraged him to play with Anna and help us set up her new dollhouse, but he said he's not feeling too well. He ended up drinking a few more beers and stayed on the porch by himself, scrolling on his phone. I didn't press harder and thought he might really just be feeling under the weather. I just want to add, for context, that Jay isn't an alcoholic. He's a sweet, wonderful, funny man who's sometimes broody and deep in thought, but he's never abusive, manipulative, or moody, and he only drinks on special occasions. The next day, on Christmas Day, we had lunch with Jay's family. Afterward, I volunteered for cleanup to help Jay's mom, 62F, Mary, and brother, 31M, John. Jay's family was the best any significant other could ever ask for. They're very sweet and supportive of us, but they're never prying. They always check up on us, but they never overstep. So, as we were cleaning up, Mary asked me how my sister's baby was. They helped with the bills when Anna was hospitalized last year. I told them that Anna's in great condition now and that she already spent the Christmas at home. They were very delighted upon hearing this. Then I shared with them the thing I noticed about Jay. Initially, I thought maybe Mary could just give me advice on how to approach the issue with Jay, since he's clearly not the playing with kids kind of guy. But then John casually said something like, "Oh, because of Rosie." Then Mary quickly shushed him. Rosie was the daughter of Jay and John's eldest sister, Beth, 35F. I never knew the actual details because everyone was very secretive about it, but all I knew was that Rosie passed away when she was just 3 years old, and Beth and her husband moved away afterward. I never met them in person. So later that night, when Mary, John, and the other family members got a bit more drunk and Jay was already sleeping in the bedroom, they told me the story. I didn't force them or anything. Apparently Jay, being the youngest of the siblings, was really close with Rosie back then. Jay was just around 14 years old when Rosie was born, so he became the super fun uncle, like I am now with Anna. He was actually Rosie's best friend. Then, on summer of 2012, Jay was playing with Rosie outside. He was blowing bubbles and she was chasing and popping them, when a speeding car, driven by a woman who was distracted on her phone, skidded into the yard toward Rosie's direction. Jay reacted quickly and was able to reach and grab Rosie so the car actually hit him, but the impact of the crash caused Rosie's head to whiplash as Jay hugged her. Jay was in a coma for 3 days and had multiple severe injuries and internal bleeding, but Rosie didn't make it. Everything was caught by the neighbor's CCTV, so everyone knew that Jay was a hero for trying to protect Rosie. It was even covered by the local news. But Beth, who was understandably in grief, resented Jay for not being able to save her daughter. Beth and her husband then decided to move to another country to cope with their grief and start a new life, and they've had minimal contact with the family ever since. Jay, meanwhile, took the loss really hard. He blamed himself for not being able to save Rosie and not being able to attend her funeral since he was still at the hospital at that time. Mary said that Jay was never the same after that. He never went near kids. and he became a lot colder, quieter, more reserved, and antisocial. He also had anger issues, but it thankfully went away. I haven't had any issues with this. We also live in an area where people don't believe in therapy, so Jay never received professional help. After learning all of this, I bawled my eyes out because I never knew Jay was carrying such a heavy burden. The whole incident became a taboo family secret that no one mentions in fear of Jay breaking down or doing something he might regret. Although, to be fair, he's never had violent or self-harm tendencies ever since, so this was just a precaution. They also never told me before because they assumed Jay would be the one to tell me, but I told them that he never did and that I never really asked him. I then thanked everyone for letting me in on this, and I told them that I'd talk to Jay about it when the time is right. They understood, and they said I could just ring them up if I need help or support in any way. For now, I just want Jay to enjoy the holidays and his remaining vacation days from work. Now, I don't really know how to start with him. I know seeking professional help to process all the trauma and grief, even if it's been over a decade ago, would be the top priority. But I don't know how to bring it up to him. I don't even know when is the right time to bring it up. I just want him to know that I love him no matter what, and that I'll support him in every step toward his healing, especially if we're to form a family of our own. Relevant comments. Commenter: Jay is amazing. What a shame his sister blamed him. But I guess that's what grief does to you. I hope he gets the therapy he needs. Oop. From what I gathered from Jay's family, Beth never really voiced out that she blamed Jay for Rosie's passing. However, she became cold toward him to the point of almost ignoring him during family gatherings before they moved. Of course, everyone knew what it was all about. Commenter: Holy crap, I think we were all thinking that he had the worst intentions in the beginning, but that couldn't be more wrong. This man was a hero, and unfortunately his family has turned it into a dirty secret. I feel for you both so much. I don't really have any advice. I just want you to know that you are both incredible people, and I hope your love finds a way, and you're able to raise a beautiful family together if you choose. Oop. It's really sad how the family handled it, but I can't really blame them because I grew up in the same area. We live in a provincial, non-progressive city, and their family even lives in a more rural community where everyone knows everyone. If there's any scandal that potentially tarnishes the family name, it's swept under the rug. I guess the heroic part of the story is something the family could have been proud of, but the trauma, anger issues, lashing out, and antisocial behavior that Jay developed, as well as how Beth left the community afterward, outweighed everything, so the entire thing just became the family's dirty secret. Commenter: She died as he was hugging her. I can't imagine the grief he went through. Oop. That's also something bothering me a lot. Of course, I'm just assuming here, but knowing how much of an overthinker Jay is who hyperfixates on what-ifs, I know he has replayed that moment in his head a million times, overanalyzing every little detail. One of the worst things he could possibly be thinking is that maybe he was the one who killed Rosie, because it was the whiplash and not the actual crash that impacted her the most. It's bad enough that he lost his niece and best friend, but for her to die in his arms and thinking that it was him who might have accidentally killed her instead of saving her is absolutely horrible. That's the what-if I fear he's thinking the most. And just to be clear, no one actually blames him. Commenter: Why are they so hard-pressed on forcing him to interact with a child more than he wants to? Instead of letting him get comfortable in his own time, you're all forcing him to do it right now. I'm very uncomfortable with children, but given time I'll come around. I just need to get over the anxiety and panic about hurting them by accident. If somebody and their family were this insistent, I'd just be more uncomfortable. Uop. I don't think anyone is really forcing him, though. In the 2 years we've welcomed Anna into this world, no one has forced Jay to interact with her just for the sake of it. I've been interacting with Anna every time our family gets together, and Jay has been distant but fine overall, and we just let him be because it was never an issue. We all just accepted that he wasn't comfortable around kids. Also, when I was encouraging him to interact more during Christmas Eve, it was more along the lines of, "Hey, you know you're welcome to help us with this dollhouse, you know? I know you're judging my lack of craftsmanship here, LOL." Amy's intention of bringing this to my attention is just to make Jay feel more welcome in our family. Again, It was me who assumed that maybe Jay was just awkward with Anna because he might have felt like an outsider and he didn't want to overstep. My entire conversation with Amy was rooted more in including Jay in our family and making him feel comfortable enough. However, given everything I've learned, I'll make sure that everyone is more sensitive with this subject around him. Update, almost 4 months later. Hi, it's been a while since my first post. I have some major updates for anyone interested. You may check my profile for my previous post. Also, I took some time to organize my thoughts first to make sure I don't miss anything pertinent. It's kinda long as a lot have happened since, so I've divided this into sections to make it easier to follow. Quick recap. My boyfriend Jay and I have been together for 5 years. Throughout our relationship, I noticed that he's always distant with kids, including my niece, Anna. During Christmas, Jay's family revealed that it was because of an incident over a decade ago. Turns out, Jay was really close with his toddler niece, Rosie. One day, when they were playing outside, they were hit by a distracted driver. Jay tried to save Rosie. He sustained severe injuries, but Rosie still didn't make it. Beth, Rosie's mom and Jay's sister, acted cold toward Jay after this. Then she and her husband moved to another country after a few months. From then on, Jay's personality changed, becoming cold and antisocial, and he never received professional help. All of this has become Jay's family's dirty secret. Part 1. The Confession. Since learning about Rosie and posting here on Reddit, I've been so conflicted about what to do. A lot of you had opposing opinions, and all of them had merit. But knowing Jay and how he'd most likely react, I chose to keep it a secret until I find the perfect time. What I didn't anticipate was that the perfect time would come in the form of a pregnancy scare. Back in January, I had a false positive. Everything happened so quickly within a day. I had a roller coaster of emotions, but bottom line was that I'm not pregnant after all. When Jay got back home that night, I knew I had to tell him everything. I told him I had a pregnancy scare, but he has nothing to worry about since it ended up being negative. At that moment, I saw all the blood drain from his face, and he became so pale that I was worried he was going to faint. I was holding his hand, and he became so sweaty and cold and shaky. He rushed to our refrigerator to get some water, and it was obvious he was spiraling really hard. That was when I told him I knew about Rosie. I came clean because I knew that was what he was panicking about. I assured him that I'm by his side and he could react however he wanted to. I repeatedly apologized for disrespecting his trust and lying to him for weeks. I also asked him to please not be mad at his family because they meant well when they told me. Throughout all of it, I couldn't really read Jay's expressions. I wasn't sure if he was about to scream out of anger or burst into tears. I told him that we don't have to talk about it any further if he doesn't want to, but I'd be willing to listen and support him whenever he's ready. His only response that time was him asking me if I wanted to break up with him, which confused me. I told him of course not. Then we hugged. Then he said he needs some time to process everything before we discuss it, which I respected. For the rest of the week, we tried to interact like nothing happened, but everything was awkward since there's this huge thing hanging between us. Part 2. The Talk. The following weekend, which was 8 days after, we finally sat down and talked about everything. He started by apologizing for not telling me sooner, but he revealed that his last girlfriend dumped him after he told her about Rosie. He said he was so relieved after I reassured him that I wouldn't do that. He then told me that it was something that's been weighing him ever since, and he's confirmed that he never sought or received professional help. However, he said he's very much open to doing that, but he didn't think he's ready yet. He also said he's afraid to go down that path because it might release some inner demons and drag me down with him. Another thing Jay told me was that ever since Rosie was born, he felt an instant and deep connection and a sense of responsibility for her, even when he was just a teenager that time. He said that having Rosie in his life made him realize how much he wanted to be a father when he's older. However, since the incident, he's afraid of messing things up again, so he never really considered having kids from then on, despite really wanting to do so. I then reassured him that we're on the same page on this. Although I also want to have kids with him in the future, I don't want to force it on him when he's not yet ready. He also said that whenever he sees me with Anna, my niece, he gets kinda jealous because he wants to join us every time. However, he constantly reminds himself to keep his distance just to be safe. I told him he doesn't have to worry about that, and that he's more than welcome to join us if he wants to. I also told him that my sister and the rest of my family actually considers him a part of our family, just to reassure him more. Jay tried to lighten the mood by joking and saying now that I know everything about him and still didn't break up with him, I could finally expect a proposal anytime soon. We both had a good laugh, but we agreed to wait for his recovery first, before getting engaged or discussing our future family. Part 3. Beth. During our discussion, Jay also had another heartbreaking revelation. He said that during the height of the pandemic, Beth's husband, Brian, reached out to him. Brian said that Beth had COVID and was confined in a hospital and that he was already running low on funds due to bills and unemployment. He also said that Beth had been almost catatonic since Rosie's passing. She had been resistant to any outside and professional help, but she was institutionalized for about a year after a self-harming incident. For the past decade, she'd been cold, distant, and withdrawn from society. Apparently, the rest of Jay's family also knew about all this, but again, they just swept it under the rug. To be fair, they had been helping Brian by sending financial aid to support Beth, but their version of the story was that Beth had just gone low contact since they moved. Also, to be very clear, Jay said that Beth never blamed him for what happened to Rosie, although he initially felt that way when he was younger. It was more of their parents interpreting and spinning things a certain way to avoid tarnishing their family's reputation. But when Brian reached out to him directly years ago, he started to understand better. However, he still hasn't processed everything, and he still partly blames himself for the whole thing. Part 4. Our current situation. For now, what we're exploring is couples therapy so we can discuss our mutual issues in a safe and pressure-free space and hopefully kind of ease him into the world of therapy. We've already found the perfect therapist to help us, and we've now had 6 sessions with her. From what I can tell, Jay seems a lot happier and less burdened. We've also had homeworks from our sessions, and Jay was even the one reminding me to do them. Right now, I'm just hoping that he becomes ready enough to open up about Rosie so he can heal and recover from his trauma. Not for me, but for his mental and emotional well-being. No rush, though, all in his own time. Also, Jay has no social media, but I showed him the original Reddit post I made. He spent like 3 hours reading through all the comments. It was the first time I saw him get teary-eyed because he never expected so many people giving him support and saying kind words to him. He was extremely overwhelmed by everyone's kindness, so we're both grateful to all of you for that. We also saw some TikTok and YouTube versions of the story, and you bet Jay browsed through all of them. He's still baffled why the TikTok versions have Minecraft or cooking videos in the background, but I just told him it's a trend, haha. So, there. If you've made it this far into our story, thank you for your time. I have a good feeling that Jay and I are going to be fine. We still have a lot of challenges ahead of us, but here's to hoping for the best. Edit. So Jay and I now kinda share this account. He might reply directly from time to time. This is his first time on Reddit, so please be kind to him. I had to explain to him what OP and a lot of the other lingo mean, haha. Yeah, but we're both reading everything. Again, thank you for being so kind. Relevant comments. Commenter. I hope Jay continues healing and eventually Beth somehow gets out of the mental hole she's in. Both them went through something horrible that no one who hasn't been in that situation can comprehend. Thoughts for both of them. Ooh, thank you for your kind words. As for Jay, I can see that he's already making some progress, even though it's more like baby steps. Nonetheless, it is still progress. As for Beth, I can't even begin to imagine what she's going through. I just pray that she finally finds some peace eventually. OOP on why Jay's family chose to keep this as a secret. OOP, I won't make excuses for them. On a human, personal level, they are extremely lovely, generous, and kind people. They have welcomed me as a part of their family, and they even extended help when my sister's daughter, Anna, had congenital health problems. I have met different relatives of my ex's before, and in comparison, Jay's family has been the most wonderful and welcoming. However, I would say that they are a product of the very traditional, non-progressive area in which we live. We are a Catholic community, and most activities revolve around our parish. Reputation is everything, yet town gossip is still very rampant. I understand that this may sound backward thinking in our modern times, but that is the reality of our lives. I also grew up in the same area, so I fully understand their behavior. Although I agree with you that everything that happened and how they reacted to it had been unfortunate to say the least, and Jay and Beth got the brunt of it. OEP on how Jay's sister Beth is dealing with the grief process and if she has received therapy to deal with her daughter's death in better ways. OOP. Beth has recovered from COVID, so she's physically fine now. However, she's still mentally detached and has gone back to her almost catatonic state. Jay suggested couples therapy to Beth's husband after experiencing it firsthand, but we don't have an update on it yet. Also, thank you so much for your insights. You said a lot of sensible things that we never knew. Both Jay and I were clueless about therapy and psychology in general, so we actually learned new things from what you said. Jay says he appreciates you and is extremely grateful, and so am I. Second story. Wife of 10 years has been cheating and ended our marriage. So this all kicked off in January, but I will give you some background on us. We have known each other for 13 years. I met her when she was working at a bar. We got to talking, and I gave her my number before I left. We had our first date 3 days after that and became inseparable from that day, as in we were together all the time. We moved in together quickly. We were always totally compatible and comfortable with each other. Our morals and core values aligned, and one of the keys was neither of us ever wanted a divorce, especially if we had kids. She comes from a broken home, hates her father for cheating on her mother and treating his kids, her and the brother, poorly. When she was pregnant with our first, she was homesick, so I finished up where I was working for us to move 1,800 kms away to a place I had never been before. I struggled to find work in my field in the new city, and after our son was born, I was just working retail, and we discussed me studying more to change careers. I got accepted into med school, which meant we had to move again. We moved to another state, and I studied hard while she made friends in our new location. That first year was because she ended up with a cancer scare, and we also had a miscarriage. I stopped study that year to stay with her and our kid. We got pregnant again while I was back at study, and we had a healthy baby boy. He actually was born on the day of my final exam, which I skipped to be with my wife. I went back to study in the new year and completed that year. It was hard being away from them all the time and having to focus on study so much. My wife now says I was neglecting her and the kids. I always asked her if she was okay, if she needed me to do anything. She never said anything to me, just complained to her friends. I got myocarditis from the COVID vaccine, and also when I caught COVID, it fucked me up pretty badly, which ended up with me missing most of a year of study. And then when I was well enough to go back to study, I got a significant spinal injury that has taken surgery and nearly 2 years of rehab to get me anywhere near being a functional human. I still have chronic unrelenting pain, but I'm managing. Through all that sickness and injury, my wife decided to first become a fitness instructor, the study to become a personal trainer, and has been working as a PT for 18 months at this point. She got herself fit and has been working on bodybuilding as well. I have always encouraged her to chase her dreams and told her she can do anything. Most of the men in her life have never believed in her. She has been away from home more and more over the last 9 months, always busy. I have become the primary carer for our kids because she leaves before they get up and often isn't home until after dinner time. Over Christmas, she was behaving distant and odd towards not just me but the kids as well. We were on holiday, but she was still stressing about work. On January 7th, she sat down on our bed and said she was feeling disconnected from me. We needed to spend more time together. She said she had been texting a guy from her gym for a couple of weeks and felt bad. It was nothing sexual, and nothing had happened. We discussed it as a warning. She agreed to us doing counseling. She cuddled into my arms and we went to sleep. The next day, after further questioning, she admitted it had been sexual, nothing physical. She agreed that she would need to stop communicating with the guy, but then decided she didn't want to after she had been to work and talked to a friend. The next day it came out it was more like 2 months, and that it was over, and she didn't want to do anything to help our relationship. Said she would be moving out. She went off and slept with the guy the next day when she was meant to be looking after the kids. When that guy, who was in his early 20s, my wife is in her mid-30s, and I'm 42, dumped her a week or 2 later, she decided we should at least do some counseling. We started counseling and agreed to a trial separation. We wouldn't tell the kids. She would continue to sleep in the spare room. We agreed to no dating or bringing anyone else into the situation. agreed to 6 months of trial and counseling for us individually and as a couple. We both started reading self-help books and exchanging the ones had read. We discussed things we found applied to us. Things were getting better. We were almost like friends again. Then she started acting weird again, to me and the kids. She had been talking to a client of hers at the gym when a guy came up and said he had been through a divorce and could give her advice and gave her his number. This blew up over Easter because she had been hiding it, once again breaching my limited trust I had in her. Before I knew about it, she actually left the home and the kids to go clear her head. She actually went and spent 2 hours with this guy. From what she has told me, this guy is older than me, has a 12-year-old son he only sees once a fortnight, and has been separated for 7 years. Cut a very long story short, everything has gone back to shit, and is actually worse than it has ever been. I don't trust a word she says. She has become totally unreliable where the kids are concerned, and she used to be all about them, her #1 priority. She is now intending to date this friend, and from her behavior has also started a sexual relationship with him already. I'm looking after the kids 80–85% of the time. She is rarely at home, and when she is, she puts in minimal effort for them and their care. I had to duck out to the shops, and when I got home, she had given the little one ice cream for dinner. Her deviance in general is self-centered at best, totally narcissistic at worst. She doesn't care how much pain she has already caused. She blames me for not being a safe space for her to open up. Her memory has also become totally screwed. She forgets things and has done none of the things for the kids she said she would. My parents are concerned about her as her personality has totally changed. Her family aren't really aware what has been happening because she doesn't talk them about what is happening in detail. All she has is her gym buddies telling her to stay strong and she will get through it. My life is in a shambles. The person I believed in and trusted the most has turned her back not just on me but our kids. I keep it together as best I can, but I struggle. I'm lucky my parents are nearby so they can come and help. I also don't have a big social support nearby because all my friends are now busy doctors or live in different states. Third story. My 37M wife, 36F, is turning into an absolute hippie psycho person, and me and my son, 12M, can't stand it anymore. A bit of backstory: I am from Puerto Rico and my wife is from suburban Kansas City. I moved to NYC in 1984 and she moved here at 18 for college and fell in love with the city. We actually met at a bar and had a one-night stand. And she got pregnant. At first we wanted her to get an abortion, but we kind of fell in love at first one-night stand and got married when our son was 3 months old. We are very, very different people. I am from the South Bronx and grew up extremely rough. I got into fights, have gotten stabbed, gotten shot at. Not a great upbringing. I wasn't the worst kid, but my friends were truly bad people. But I mostly got out of that lifestyle by the time I met her. So basically, we've raised our son and have had our ups and downs, but we are both successful at our jobs and whatnot. But in the past year or two, her attitude towards certain things have changed. Here's just a list of what I'm talking about. She refuses to eat gluten. This should give you a staple of the stereotype she fits into now. She is now 100% vegan and gets extremely mad when we eat meat in the house. She goes to yoga 3 times a week and cries when we don't want to go with her. She suddenly doesn't like movies with violence or drugs or partying. She gets extremely protective of our son about this. She doesn't let our son hang out with his friends sometimes because the friends are too rowdy and come from uncultured families. She doesn't let our son bike around the neighborhood with his friends at all. She needs to constantly be with him when he is hanging out. She literally took his iPod and changed the music to what she considers good music. This consists of Justin Timberlake and Mumford & Sons, Macklemore, Taylor Swift type stuff mostly. Our son liked electronic dance music and metal a lot. This was one of the worst things she did, in my opinion. She thinks that I am too masculine in the way I act and constantly tries to correct the way I act, saying I have toxic masculinity in me. She uses this near constantly when I tell her I don't like how she babies our son. She calls the cops on basically any crime she sees, including one time when we walked by a house party and she called the cops because underage drinking was happening and she wants to keep her community safe. One time she also called the cops because a few Spanish teens were playing soccer in the street and she just assumed they were up to no good. That made me insanely upset. Honestly, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This has been her for the past 2-3 years. and we have gotten into near constant arguments about this. I tell her she is too sensitive about nearly everything, and then she goes off on rants and tries to show me all these weird articles about how what I'm doing is gaslighting her. She also is trying really, really hard to act young, like she goes to indie shows in Williamsburg filled with 22-year-old hipsters and tries to chat people up to make friends. Then when she gets rejected or something like that from those indie circles, she comes home and cries in my arms and is depressed for days. She wants so badly to be a part of that crowd, she seems to have anxiety and depression issues. I do honestly feel bad for her. She keeps up this insane persona. She describes herself as a modern-day hippie. She spends all her time checking out new cafes and brunch spots with her friends. I know how this started. She got a job at this new office filled with young yuppies. Basically, right after that, she changed into this, I think, to keep up with her coworkers, but it's clearly turned into something much more devastating and self-esteem damaging than that. I just want her to be herself, not this crazy person trying to perfect everything around her to fit her worldview. Interestingly enough, if you have ever seen S3E1 of Black Mirror, she reminds me insanely of the main character of that episode, but more willing to disrupt everything around her to fit what she wants, even if it inconveniences others. But this is all recent. She was never like this 4 years ago. She was just a regular working woman who liked to relax and hang out and didn't take it much seriously like she does now. We used to get drunk at dive bars together. We used to party a bit even. It all hit a bad point about a week ago when my son, who also has been in conflict with her nearly constantly, got into a major argument with her. The argument was over whether he can hang out with his friends who were outside, and she said no because there were too many of them, and she thought it was bad to hang out in such large groups. This is the type of shit she thinks about. I know she really didn't want him out there because the kids were mostly black and Spanish. But he is half Puerto Rican. He got so mad he took dishes and began shattering them on the ground. Then he left and didn't come back for 5 hours while my wife hysterically cried and called the cops to find him. Since then, he is not allowed to leave the house, and my wife has cried nightly for losing our son. She has become extra horrible towards me and my son. She thinks I am on his side simply because I tried to defend him and say she was overreacting. But every time I say she is overreacting, she has a breakdown and says I am just doing what men do to women. I don't even know what to do anymore. I know that this isn't her. I know that she has developed some serious mental problems in the past 2-3 years. I know this isn't normal for her. I don't want to divorce her, but I'm not sure if I can handle this any longer. She has broken down. She is in bed crying nearly all day. She will sometimes go off yelling at me that I am the epitome of toxic masculinity, and then an hour later be crying in my arms saying she loves me more than anything. Is this some type of personality disorder? Does she need therapy? What can I say to make her calm down? I was thinking about writing a heartfelt letter about the way she has been acting. That way she can't interrupt me like she usually does with the screaming. I don't want to argue. I just want to make my point and have her respond. But I don't want to seem as if I disapprove of her entire lifestyle and everything she has done. What the hell do? I feel so passive in this situation, and she goes nuts when she sees me acting completely normal while she is crying or yelling or whatnot, as if every time she is acting crazy, I have to act crazy too about whatever she is crazy about at the moment. What the fuck do? I do not want a divorce. I want to help her. We both still very much love each other despite this madness. Relevant comments. Commenter: I think your wife has fallen into the perfect modern woman trap. A lot of women get this idea in their head that they have to be a perfect model of femininity, feminism, motherhood, strength, sexuality, youthfulness, social awareness, cultural awareness, etc. And frankly, there is no woman alive that can be that perfect, so it just spirals into panic and feelings of failure. Your wife needs therapy. You have to sit her down and lay it all out and tell her therapy is a must for your family to feel whole and peaceful. She needs to understand how serious this is. Oop. This, almost exactly. I'm so glad you wrote that because it really makes me realize a lot of what she is trying to do and why it's causing her so much stress. Also, it helps that it seems to be a common problem with women her age, so she isn't alone. I just want her to know that especially because I bet she looks around and believes all the women around her, especially at her job, are perfect modern women. Commenter: Let me share something with you as an ex-vegan. Her emotional distress could very well be due to a vitamin D and/or B12 deficiency. I know, it sounds crazy, but that shit is real and it makes you a depressed, weeping wacko. Vegans usually do not get enough VITD or B12 through their diet, and both should be supplemented. This is scientifically documented. Is she taking a B12 supplement? Her other crazy behaviors are more likely related to depression and a sudden feeling like she has no identity. She really could benefit from some therapy or at least some parenting classes to help her find tools to connect back to your son without damaging the relationship. Personally, I think she sounds too controlling over him, but a lot of parents start this kind of behavior when they suddenly realize their kids are independent. First, tell your wife she needs to be taking B12 supplements at the very least, and ideally Vit D too. See if that helps mellow out her moods. I was shocked at what a difference it made in mine. Feeling like she has no identity is the perfect way to describe it. She came to NYC a totally normal girl in a city of extremely interesting people, and I think when she came face to face with that side of the city at her new job, she just became overwhelmed with jealous for that lifestyle. It's almost like if she can't be the perfect modern woman, as someone else who commented described it, she can't be anything. I am definitely going to ask her about the B12 thing. That could easily be a solution, but it's not going to solve her ongoing issues. She only became a vegan like 6 months ago. These issues have been going on for years now. Commenter: God almighty, man, I'm so sorry for you. You need to give her an ultimatum, and I usually think that's a bad idea, of couples and individual therapy. You may have to start with couples, or you find a divorce lawyer. This is seriously stunting your poor son. Never mind yourself. Now's the time to be a good father and intervene in a way that helps your son to live a normal life. I am thinking about this, but I have mentioned therapy before and she accused me of gaslighting her and got even more sad. I'm going to make a true, heartfelt request that we both go to therapy. I don't feel as if I need it for myself, but I know she will feel better if I act as if we both need it. Update. Figured I would update this with all the craziness that has happened. Wife had an absolute breakdown at both me and my son, and she basically ran away and got wasted at a bar, then came back and threatened to kill herself with pills. Called the police, they came, and by the time they came, she was just crying on the couch, and the cops left. Didn't really know what to do. My son was crying and everything. I told her she has to go to a mental hospital or see a doctor as soon as possible, and she then got even more mad at me, and then she went upstairs and just started screaming like an insane person. She did end up going to the doctor, who diagnosed her with B12 deficiency at a severe level. Just like you guys said. She has been taking pills, and I can't even describe what has changed in her. She went from an absolute downward spiral into madness and controlling everything to a just much more clear-minded, calm person. She sometimes feels weird about admitting just how wrong she was about certain things, and she said she never realized how blind she was to how horrible she was treating the people around her. She said her anxiety over things would sometimes spike through the roof, and she over-relied on blogs she read on the internet to help control her life. I am glad she has been able to admit these things. I honestly feel like some of it wasn't entirely B12 deficiency, though. Or at least she might be retracting a lot of the stuff she did and said, which had nothing to do with the deficiency. Like her going vegan was a symptom of the original problem, not like veganism is bad, that she was desperate to fit in with the young yuppie crowd. I'm not sure if she is purposely blaming all of her old weird problems on B12 deficiency, but that weird stuff started before she went vegan, so I think there was still some insecurity problems there. I'm just glad she has spent the last 2 weeks realizing how problematic she has been. She said she was like in a trance, where she thought the entire world was against her, and the things she read on the internet confirmed that there was some global conspiracy, as she describes it, to make her be a dependent person or some shit like that. I'm just so glad she is back. So glad. How do you like these stories? Write your opinion in the comments. Let's get 1,000 subscribers on this channel. Love you.